Okay, so God, a lot has happened in the last few days. Obviously, Leeds United getting promoted back to the Premier League with West Brom not getting enough points to stop them getting automatic promotion. However, Leeds are not necessarily champions of the Championship. There are still games to play. Brentford can still technically stop them being champions, as can West Brom. So that's really interesting. 16 years since Leeds were last in the Premier League, and we can discuss, why it's taken them so long to bounce back from that relegation. The former Washington Redskins, who have obviously got to be rebranded and renamed in the NFL. Lots of allegations coming out this week in the press about the culture at the team. Apparently, allegations of match rigging, match fixing, spot fixing referees at the former Washington Redskins, bullying, sex parties, drugs, a whole host of issues at the Redskins. That's something to discuss. The Brisbane Broncos suffering yet another record defeat to the West Tigers, 48-0. That's a record defeat for them against the West Tigers, and it's also a record number of points they have conceded against the West Tigers, and that's the second time they've been held to nil this season, only winning one game since the resumption of play down under. The Man City appeal against UEFA's ban is something I want to talk about because they get, a 2-year punishment and a fine, and then they get it reduced to a fine, and it makes a mockery of the financial fair play rules. UEFA's, had, I think, their authority weakened in the fact that the Court of Arbitration for Sport this is the third appeal they've heard from a club that has been singled out for breach of financial fair play, has been given a punishment, and the punishment's been reduced. So that, is an ongoing thing. And of course, we've got the Chelsea Man United second FA Cup semi-final in a couple of hours. That'll be interesting. Let's not necessarily will lose a Champions League spot because Chelsea and Man United are playing today. It's what Chelsea and Man United do with their game in hand after this semi-final. But Man City losing to the worst Arsenal team in 30 years, days after Arsenal beat Liverpool as well. All this talk from, I can't stand Pep Guardiola. I don't think Leicester will lose their Champions League spot just yet. We have to see what Chelsea and Man United, Man United realise that they can get into the Champions League by winning the FA Cup. And this Arsenal team that has got through the final is the worst Arsenal team for a generation. He's possibly the worst Chelsea. And Man City have won their appeal. This is what I find is the problem. AC Milan and PSG also won their appeals as well. UEFA have even admitted, Alexander Serafin has come out and said the financial fair play rules don't work. So UEFA have already undermined their position 2 years ago by saying the rules we have in place don't work. Yet they are still trying to punish clubs for breaking those said rules that are filled with loopholes and don't work. Now, what I argued the other day after Man City were successful, where does it leave UEFA? They have to sit down with the national FAs that constitute UEFA, all 55 member FAs, sit down with them and say, right, we need a salary cap or a spending cap in place going forward, because financial fair play is done on percentage of earnings and income. It's not actually you are only allowed to spend 35 million on salaries or 35 million on transfer. It's done on a percentage of income, expenditure, and all the other things like that. It's complicated mathematics, really, and accounting that's well above my GCSE level maths. But they've said it doesn't work. There are clubs in the Premier League right now that are in breach of financial fair play and have been for a while. And with the situation as it is, Manchester United are losing. And this is where with the current lack of fans in stadiums and the way football finance is broken. If a club the size of Man United, regardless of how they're doing on the pitch, okay, we know Man United are having a bit of a rough patch, although it has improved recently. You look at Manchester United, they are losing match day revenue. Okay, just match day revenue alone. We're not including their shirt sales, sponsorship. They still sell the programs as well. But Manchester United are losing 5 million per home game without fans in attendance. So that tells you the problem without fans being there that a Premier League club faces, such as Man United, £5 million a home game. You replicate that down to League Two and League One, where you are having the losses where you've gone from a league which is not reliant on fans in attendance for profit, And you go down to League One and League Two, where you are reliant on fans and attendance to turn a profit. If you take that as a percentage, what your ticket price is, what your capacity is, that's the reason why 50 to 60 clubs are facing going out of business, going out of existence. 50 to 60 clubs. Bearing in mind there's now 91 clubs left in the Premier League and Football League structures after Bury went bust. And I really follow that story from the beginning to the end. And the EFL and the FA really failed to act in that situation. Bolton at the same time nearly went up the Swanee, and they acted differently in Bolton's case rather than Bury's, but again didn't do much. And then we get Macclesfield, and they kept punishing the club and punishing the club, punishing the club, punishing the club. And yet they still managed to survive getting kicked out of the Football League. And they have Wigan. Now, Wigan are going to appeal their points deduction, and the way that their points deduction has been implemented is a joke. And Wigan are going out and winning every game just to make sure they've got enough points to stay up, to avoid relegation. They don't want to get deducted the 12 points at the start of next season because there may not be a next season in League One and League Two. So they're trying to win every game now because they're 8 points above the bottom relegation zone, and their punishment was implemented to say that at the end of the season you could be deducted the 12 points. I think they're trying to get that buffer so when they are deducted the points, they stay in the Championship. There's problems, and UEFA have got this financial fair play rule that the domestic FAs have to implement, and the domestic FAs are implementing this rule when it's unenforceable because they want to go after Wolves, they want to go after some of the promoted clubs, they want to go after a variety of clubs. It was UEFA who went after Man City, it was UEFA who went after AC Milan, it was UEFA who went after PSG, but the domestic FAs have that same rule in place where they can go after these clubs and they don't. Because the rule's toothless. On the thoughts on Leeds getting promotion, 16 years, and we can discuss the problems behind that. And that was, again, one of the reasons why the fit and proper persons test failed and the financial fair play rules, as they were, rulings in place to make sure it didn't happen. Leeds are one of the clubs that the reason those rules were brought in more stringently was Peter Ridsdale, and all that. And it really was an absolute shambles at Leeds. They got to a Champions League semi-final, nearly won the Champions League. I think they finished second in the Premier League. They really went for it in the early 2000s, and a really good team. You had Vidukas, Olivier Dacour, you had Harry Kewell, Hasselbank, Nigel Martin in goal, followed by Paul Robinson. So England international goalkeepers, you had international strikers, you had really talented side. And then it all 16 years ago went tits up badly. And I watched a game at St Mary's against Southampton. And this is the problem that Leeds had. They couldn't defend. On the field, they were struggling, but it was off the field. The problems really started manifesting themselves. Some of their transfer decisions, overpaying players, and then when the money problem started, they couldn't offer the players the wages that other clubs would. So they lost some talent, overpaid talent coming in. They mishandled the transfer market, but they were 3-0 down at half time. Their best player that season was Alan Smith. They bring Alan Smith on. He scores 2 goals in like 10 minutes and then gets sent off. So yeah, on the field the discipline wasn't great, but off the field, when Peter Ridsdale was chairman, my God, the financial mess that was caused with overspending, just throwing money around. And Leeds were not a wealthy club in the sense of clubs now. They had a very successful period in the sense where they were doing very well in the Champions League. They were doing very well on the field for a couple of seasons. The last time they won a trophy was 1992. So they had a couple of seasons where they were back at the top. And they bet the farm basically. They bet the farm, and it backfired massively. It's taken 16 years, a lot of relegation. There's been relegations in there. They got relegated out of the Championship. They went as low as League One. 16 years, and it's taken a very, very long time to get back. And this is the danger of financial mismanagement. Look at Portsmouth, look at Blackburn, look at Bolton, Wigan. You can name a whole host of ex-Premier League clubs who ended up in League One and League Two. And the ownership issue is one of the things that's held them back in the last 16 years. They've been into administration. They've had issues with finances for the better part of most of that 16-year period until recently. The saga with Cellini, or Cellino, whatever his name was, dragged on, damaged the integrity of the club further, put further strain on the finances. There were rumours of another administration. They have been hit badly in the last 15 years. And if you think Sheffield will be a one-club city, you'd be wrong. Sheffield United and Sheffield Wednesday are older than Leeds. They predate Leeds. Sheffield Wednesday is one of the oldest clubs. Sheffield United, one of the oldest clubs. That's a two-club city. Leeds could be a two-club city. Yes, Leeds does have a rather large fan base. And yes, it is, I think, a national fan. I went to school with kids who were Leeds fans on the south of England. So they have Leeds as I would say, a national fan base. National. Problem obviously Leeds has had is they've been in the wilderness. And I mean, he could do the same as what Wolves have done, but I think Wolves, the financial fair play argument, which is flawed, and we know it's flawed. There's been rumours that the FA and UEFA, if Wolves keep qualifying for Europe, could go after Wolves. And I'm thinking to myself, well, you can't even get the big boys, the big fish you want to get. You're not going to get Wolves. You want to make an example of these clubs, yeah, every time you punish a club, they appeal, and it's done with. I think, and this is where Newcastle, the takeover of Newcastle, this takeover has dragged on too long. The paperwork was filed in April. It's now July, and it's the second half of July. It's August in a couple of weeks, and that has seriously dragged on unnecessarily. The FA and the Premier League need to really speed up the process. We know there's concerns about who's taking over the group, the Saudi investment part of it, but that's not where all the money's coming from. It surprises me the Reuben brothers themselves haven't gone, we'll buy the club outright with the man of slavery. Why do we need Saudi investment? It's because of the transfer kitty. It's because of the extra funding. It's not just buy the club, it's the funds behind. Now, it is dragging on. That in itself is concerning. I think the Newcastle fans definitely deserve better than Mike Ashley for how the club is run. But at the same time, we have to question where money in football is coming from. We have to question where money in professional sport is coming from. And this Newcastle situation is dragging on and on and on. And it's doing nothing for the players on the field. I mean, Steve Bruce, love him or loathe him, he's got to question his job and his job security. Much like Rafa Benitez before him, not being given the transfer funds, but not being given a clear indication of a job security. And that in itself will manifest to the players. And then that isn't great when it comes to results. But you see, what interesting is with Newcastle, and my cousin goes to university there, and I've got friends who went to university there, I've got friends from Newcastle, is where the stadium is. It's not on the edge of town, it's right in the city centre. It is dominating the city skyline. And Newcastle itself, actually, the population is a little bit bigger than people realise. It's a very concentrated city. And the fan base there, they pack out that stadium week in, week out. It's when the fans start towards the end, before the pandemic, to turn their backs on the Mike Ashley regime in the last, I would say, 12 months. The fans have been turning up since the 50s without silverware, week in, week out. And when you've got a fan base that is so loyal, so stupidly loyal, they must be the most loyal fans in professional sports, because other teams have gone through down patches where it's not been a very successful period and fans stayed away. Newcastle fans, they must be a glutton for punishment, because they turn up. They turn up daily. And they turn up, until recently, packing out a 56,000-seater stadium. It tells you how loyal they are. I think this is why Mike Ashley has got away with poor ownership, bad ownership, for as long as he has, is because he knows the fans will turn up. And if you are, what do I think the new Redskins name will be? Well, what's come out with the Washington franchise in these articles in the Washington Post is deeply disturbing. 15 female employees at head office have come out and mentioned a very toxic bullying and sexual harassment culture. One of them has been brave enough to go out fully publicly and be named. And I suggest you go on the Washington Post sports section, read the Washington Redskins article. The other 14 refused to be named publicly. They didn't want to be. Now, I follow the Pat McAfee show. So an ex-NFL player who's got his own channel, his own radio show. He's got his own little media company. There are other allegations coming out that were not printed in the article. Now, obviously, the NFL were clearly aware of the other allegations that have been verified by independent sources as allegations. Now, we don't know if anything this has all been, confirmed as true, but we know that there's been allegations of drugs, alcohol, sex parties. It depends if you're going to Nevada or not. But the real scary one for the integrity of the sport. Now, yes, the toxic culture of alcohol abuse and not giving these players and staff members the help with addiction that they need, and a turn in the right direction. Now, you have a problem. Here's some help. Keep it in house. Is the alleged bribery towards is the alleged bribery towards match officials. That's come out as well. Now, these are allegations and they're not fully proven. And the article had 75% of what the journalists at the Washington Post wanted to write suppressed. They didn't fully publish all the allegations against the Washington NFL franchise. And that's what's deeply disturbing. Now, they're going through they've announced in recent weeks, obviously they're changing the name, they're rebranding themselves, they're rebranding the franchise, they're dropping the Redskins name. But this has been going on for 50 years. People have been pushing for the name to be dropped. So this is not a new thing. But Schneider is the owner, has said, yeah, okay, we're going through this rebranding. And we're going through, this change. And the sex party thing, I mean, Christ, there are sex clubs swingers clubs where you can go. I don't think that's necessarily illegal. It's the drugs and alcohol abuse and how members of staff, players, coaches were having issues with substance abuse and weren't getting the help. The allegations that are the printed allegations that are actually a printed article that are in public domain, going on about the fact that members of staff have been bullied, harassed, sexually harassed, and nothing was done about it for 15 years. The Cleveland Indians and the Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks are looking at a redesign of their logo, not necessarily a name change. The Cleveland Indians have dropped the Indian mascot anyway, and again are considering possibility of a name change. But what is interesting is the Blackhawks and the Indians have not faced the same. How do I put it? Pressure for a name change or a rebrand. They have just decided to go, you know what? We're seeing public perception online about certain imagery, cultural imagery. We're going to drop that. They've done it in a different way. They're not being forced to do it. They decided to do it of their own choice. And the difference being is they're not under public pressure as much as the Washington Redskins. But now what we know about the situation in Washington, D.C., and the allegations spreading through, it wouldn't surprise me if Washington are not the only team to have these problems, but because of the social movements and the civil rights movements currently in the US and around the world, there is a big spotlight in Washington, D.C. on a lot of things. And the team have come out and said, we're going through this rebranding, we're going through this rebuild, we're going through this change. And this has now come out. It couldn't come out at the worst time. And more is going to come out. I think other sports franchises have had these allegations before. Now, Roger Goodell, I don't think is a very good sports commissioner. I don't think Redskins and Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys is cowboy country. It's ranching country, isn't it? The Washington Redskins, I mean, crikey, with what the US government did to the Native Americans over the last 300 years, sticking them on reservations and ethnically cleansing them, yeah, that's a bit of a problem. It's not like they've named it after the local tribe, like the Cherokee or or the Potomac people or whatever. They've generally got a racist name to a racist symbol, whereas the Chicago Blackhawks, the Black Hawk tribe, were an actual tribe of Native Americans, and they are honouring the native tribe of Native Americans. The issue with the Cowboys is what's been coming out. The issue with the Redskins is what's coming out recently. Right. The issue with the Washington franchise is the prediction to the petition are that the Red Devils, they're not the only team to be nicknamed the Red Devils. They're not the only. Oh, look, listen here, Cheeseburger. The reason why I'm not answering your messages is because you're going on about sex parties all the time. It's got nothing to do with your picture. You just mentioned something that isn't. I've already mentioned it. I'm discussing it. The fact you say you have sons of sex parties, that's fine for you. But I'm trying to keep this as a sporting kind of discussion rather than whatever you get up to. I've got no interest in your weight. I've got no interest in your picture. I think, well, I've got no interest in that. So, yeah, your messages are coming up. You're just not adding anything of value to the conversation. Petition onto the Manchester United nickname the Red Devils. I don't see a problem with that. I really don't. I think the interest, like Saints, St Helens, Southampton, rugby league and football teams having Saints as an nickname. I don't see any kind of issue there. I think the issue with, yes, there's the Cardiff Devils. There's no problem there. Really, I think with the whole Washington situation on what's come out, the NFL is a league beset by scandal. May I just add, there's been scandal after scandal after scandal with the NFL, and there's a culture within the NFL that has I think you have to look at the amount of scandals in the NFL over the last 20 years, and especially since Roger Goodell's been commissioner, it's still happening. They haven't cleaned up house. What's happening at Washington has probably been replicated across the NFL out of a number of franchises. I don't think it's just a Washington situation, but we've seen it with the Vikings, we've seen it Green Bay, we've seen it Kansas City Chiefs. Individual players have done things inappropriate. Coaches, backroom staff. This is not a new thing, but something on such a scale that the last 15 years have been such a shit show, quite frankly, in Washington, is disturbing. This gets replicated across the board, across a multitude of sports. This is not an isolated thing, but the fact that what's happening now with Washington Redskins, formerly Washington Redskins, now the formerly what should we call them, the Washington Unknowns, is that they've been under pressure about the name change and the logo change for 50 years. This is not something that's happened overnight. This is not like Black Lives Matter movement has just done this overnight, or this is an overnight thing. The pressure has been put on the organisation and the NFL for a name change for generations, decades. They have resisted. Oh, fuck off then, you utter tool. I'm not a clown, mate. You're clearly a... Oh, fuck off. Go away. You utter clown. I'm not an idiot. You are. Now, I think with... we've seen allegations similar to this with other sports teams and other sports leagues. I mean, the NRL has had countless scandals with players and team backroom staff misbehaving. Football, there's been so many players caught misbehaving. It's a cultural thing. Rugby union, rugby league, it's a cultural thing. There have been individual NHL players who've done things. There's been baseball. I've done things. The NHL is coming back on August the 1st with 6 games a day. You have the playoff play-in series. You then have, I think, a round robin set of games for the seeded teams. They've basically decided to move all the city hubs to Canada. There were plans to have the hub cities in the US. I think it will be on Premier Sports, Free Sports. I think Sky Sports have got some, BT Sport. I think It's going to be interesting what happens with the NHL. They are the first North American sport, apart from NASCAR and golf, to come back, and they've given a date. They've got a time frame. Teams are back in training camps. They've sorted out the CBA. They've done all these things that the other professional leagues in North America can't do, and its TV ratings are going to be interesting. The fact that they've decided to go to Canada and have the hub cities in Canada is very, very interesting. Yes, now the Blue Jays. I don't follow Major League Baseball. I'm not a religious fan of it. Major League Baseball is another sport that's been set by scandal. The fact that the Blue Jays cannot play in their home stadium is interesting, but again, I think Toronto has more cases of the virus. You know, their travel restrictions, quarantine. They're the only. I think they're the only current Canadian franchise in Major League Baseball at the moment. I'm not 100% certain on that, but the US-Canadian border is shut now. With the NHL, they've been working with the authorities to, and bear in mind, in the NHL, I think 50% of players are Canadian anyway. You've got the facilities available. I think the issue is, and we've seen this with Major League Soccer as well, is players testing positive. 2 teams have already pulled out of Major League Soccer's tournament in Florida. And you've got to have the facilities to be able to play the games. The Blue Jays thing, I find that interesting that Canadians have said, no, the Blue Jays, you can't play your games here. I think it's to do with the quarantine. I think it's because the training camps are held in Florida and Arizona, which are states that have exploded with virus outbreaks. Not technically second peaks. They haven't got through the first peak yet. This is America because 50 states and they have an idiot for a president. The Canadian authorities have said the Blue Jays cannot play because where they basically the training camps were when lockdown happened. Players have been in Florida. Players have been in Arizona, states that have high infection rates right now, and they would have to quarantine. The teams would have to quarantine for 2 weeks. It'd be unfeasible to. Colorado is not right next to Canada; it's right in the middle of the US. But yes, Colorado doesn't have the same amount of cases as Florida and Arizona. But here's the problem: there's a massive problem with doing that. Major League Baseball hasn't really got a plan. They want to play in Florida and Arizona and use those locations as hub locations. They are also locations where the virus infection rate has gone through the roof. You look at no, that's Dakota. That's Montana. That's Dakota. That's Idaho. That's Washington State. That's Oregon. That's all the states where nothing happens apart from meth production. Colorado's slap bang right in the middle of the US in the Rocky Mountains. Now, yes, in theory, you could have Colorado as a hub location. But at the same time, what we're seeing in the US is different states have different quarantine rules. The different states are doing well. Some states are doing really well. Some states aren't doing so well, like New York, Florida, Arizona, California, Texas. That's a mess. Other states are doing significantly better. So Major League Baseball's in a situation. Now, Major League Baseball is a sport that's had steroid scandal, betting scandals, the Astros cheating scandal recently. Only Major League sport in North America without salary cap. They have no road plan going forward. The NFL has now been rocked by the allegations involving the Washington, D.C. team, who will get to be renamed. You've got Major League Soccer teams are pulling out of their tournament to try and get their season done and withdrawing. Major League Rugby, new league, finding its feet, teams in locations where the virus is out of control. So they can't restart. You've got the NBA. I think they're the closest league to restarting. Look on social media when it comes to the NFL. Just look on social media. But what's happened in the US Capitol with Washington was replicated across sports. This is not a new thing. There has been allegations about UK sport, UK athletics, and the win at all costs mentality. And I was reading an article about that in a British newspaper about the win at all cost mentality that the UK athletics and UK sport had post 1996 Atlanta Olympic Games, which was the worst Olympics Britain's ever had, and how they changed the culture. And initially, yes, there was some payoff. There was improvement in Sydney. There was improvement in Athens. There was improvement in Beijing. And then London exploded. And then you had Brazil and all that. The win at all cost mentality is just as toxic as the culture of bullying, harassment, and I have to admit, I'm not an NFL fan massively. I mean, I will watch the odd game, but a logo redesign or a name change or whatever it is can be fun. It's a chance to engage with your fan base. It's a chance to engage with the wider sporting community, get ideas. It's like Seattle. Are they gonna, drop their name and logo? I mean, that's something that they could do right now to, look, NHL's coming back. By the way, here's a name drop: the Seattle franchise joining the NHL. I mean, it does create interest. It does create involvement. When you have a rebranding or a relocation or whatever it is, or a new team coming in, it is great to have some fan feedback, engage with your fan base, understand why they're unhappy with what's been going on before, why they're unhappy with the situation. I think something like the I don't know what name they would come out with, like the Washington Warriors. You could have, the yes, yes, the Leeds logo change. They clearly didn't listen to fan feedback. They should have just left things as were. I look at logo designs on football shirts and how they evolve over time, but that didn't go down well. I'm not a big fan of Chelsea's new logo. I'm not a big fan of Man City's new logo. As a Blackburn fan, we've had a few logo tweaks. I think Man United have tweaked their logo. They haven't changed it. But you look at sports logos and how you rebrand over time. You look at the NHL. Buffalo had the Buffer slug. That thing was hideous. Dallas Stars had the Muterus. I mean, there's been some pretty horrific. I wouldn't. Well, they're running out of choices they can have. I mean, you could have the Washington Chieftains, but Washington Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they are limited in what they can do. I mean, Washington Braves. There's one. You could have. They are limited in what they can choose, but at the same time, 50 years they've had time to do this. 50 years that there's been feedback that this name and this branding and this logo needs to change. So the fact they're doing it now is great. The other stuff that's come out about them bribing officials and players not sticking around there either. Players don't tend to stick around in the US capital. They tend to play a couple of seasons, play out their contract, and they're off. There's the Washington White House. I suppose you could use the Senators, but then Ottawa have that. That would be an interesting connection. Two badly run franchises with owners that are hated by their fan bases. That would be interesting. I think but then you look at team ownership and how involved fans are with the team, and you can tell the health of a team or a sport by the fan interaction. And that's what you can tell how healthy a team is, how healthy a sport is with the fan interaction and the fan responses to changes made to the sport. I look at VAR in our football and how fans have turned against it very, very quickly. I look at how fans have responded to UEFA's financial fair play and then the punishment that Man City just had overturned. Fans are angry. It says to me the health of the sport is not great. I look at the fact the AFL and the NRL in Australia have returned, and fans are loving it. They're loving the fact that their sports are back. This is a baseball cap. This is a minor league, Major League Baseball minor league affiliate. This is nothing to do with the Dallas Stars. My Jets hat is in the wash. I have some Arizona stuff somewhere, which I think is in the wash as well. I'm hockey fan. But yeah, I'm not a Stars fan, although I do like some of the Stars players, past and present. Not gonna lie there. On the side of healthy sport and a non-healthy sport, I look at the social media and things that have been going online about the NFL. It's not just Washington; it's the whole league. There is a very unhappy majority of fans on a whole host of issues, a whole host of situational issues. Um, the fact that the NFL said no players that take the knee and all that, their teams and those players will be punished, fined, whatever. Now they're going, oh well, no, we won't punish and fine them. We shouldn't have done that. Reaction and the divisiveness says that this is not a sport that's in a healthy place. Roger Goodell is a hopeless commissioner, in my view. Hopeless. Because you look at the allegations that are coming out of Washington, as I say, and you could replicate them at any one of the franchises to do with the NFL. You've had Spygate, Deflategate with the Patriots. There's been issues about how the Patriots went about winning and creating their success. The Minnesota Vikings had the sex boat party on the lake. Massive repercussions there. Very similar to what's happening in Washington. But these were in the days before social media really kicked on. More will come out. I think the NFL are playing on the back foot because their league hasn't restarted. They have no plans. They have no start date yet for football in pre-season in August, September, and then the actual start date for the league. They have a damage control exercise to initiate. And yeah, Major League Baseball's in the same boat. They haven't got a restart plan. They a league beset by scandal. Not good. Back onto the football today. Man United, Chelsea. This is two clubs that haven't fallen on hard times as such because they're still winning trophies. But the gap between Chelsea and Man United and Liverpool, Man City, and Leicester is there. I honestly believe it's there. I think Chelsea and Leicester are pretty close, but Man United, yes, things have started to improve since the lockdown and the return to football, but they are a long way off being champions anytime soon. Major changes need to happen in recruitment, in playing style. I think Solskjaer, is he the right guy to run the team? No. But I will say this about Man United Chelsea. They played out the worst FA Cup final a couple of years ago. The worst. Hopefully this semi-final is a lot better than that cup final a couple of seasons back, which was, what I described on the channel as the worst cup final of any kind, of any description I have ever seen. It was diabolically poor. Yes, I mean, you missed out Brian McBride and a few other players in there, but yes, Pulisic is looking like a good player. It's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top today because obviously Leicester are sort of flopping it against Tottenham. Both these clubs are holding a hunt for a Champions League place, and Arsenal, their opponents in the final, this is the worst Arsenal team for 30 years. They have an opportunity to win a trophy whilst not really delivering on the pitch compared to some of their rivals. Man City, everyone was going for Man City to win comfortably. They get beaten by the worst Arsenal team in 30 years, backing up their, Do I think Wickham will do well in the Championship, go straight back down? We don't know what football's going to look like next season. So when everyone says, oh, how's my team going to do in this league or that league? I'm going to tell you this now. We have no idea what football's going to look like next season. If 50 to 60 clubs are going to go out of business, that means some Championship clubs will go out of business. I'm not going to lie. That's what the Huddersfield owner is saying. Wickham, I think it's going to be a big ask for them to stay up, considering the size of the club. And I have watched Wickham play, and I in many years past, and I've been to the stadium and all that. The size of the club, the budget they're on, it is going to be difficult. I think I don't know if they'll go straight back down. We don't know what's going to happen with Wigan's point deduction yet, and how that's going to affect things for this season remainder or next season. They're appealing it, but I'm going to say this now about next season. We do not know what next season's going to look like. Quite frankly, we've got to finish this season first. And the way football didn't have a unified purpose going into the lockdown and coming out of it, the different FAs were like, no, we're suspending league, we're dragging this out, we're not restarting this league, we're restarting that one. UEFA were pushing, we want to get all the domestic leagues completed. that went to pot very quickly with Belgium and Holland going, no, we're not. We don't know what's going to happen with the Champions League yet. We don't know what's going to happen with the Europa League yet. We don't know what. I mean, they are getting the playoffs done. There are teams challenging the points per game, promotions and relegations. There's going to be some legal battles. There are going to be clubs financially up against the wall in the coming months, and we don't know what the situation is going to be like. I couldn't tell you if Wycombe will stay up or go down. In a normal year, it would be a massive ask for Wycombe to stay in the Championship. Okay, massive ask. This is not a normal year. Football finances are being stretched right now. Again, we've got the discussion about should we have salary caps and spending caps, and this is something that should have been discussed 12 years ago with the financial crash that we had. These discussions should have been ongoing decades ago. What we have seen is the rampant financial mismanagement of a whole host of clubs up and down the league structure, and we just don't know, because we don't know when if there is a second spike, which is very likely to happen, by the way, in this virus, we could be locked down again. We could have regional lockdowns. We've seen what's happened actually in Leicester, regardless of its fact 3.5 time. By the way, if this is a Tottenham side, they like choking it. Something could change in the second half. Leicester could have a comeback. Watch this space. It's not looking. Get to the Barbers. Nah. I've just got my hair's a bit of a mess this morning. This afternoon, I can't be asked to go to the Barbers and grind my hair. That's why I wear the hats. Well, wear hats. Hats are good. They hide the mullet. Plus lockdown and I work all the time. Tottenham being 3-0 up at half time. Nothing is certain in sport, and Tottenham are a team known for choking in the big game. On the side of the game today, yes, it kicks off in an hour's time. I will be watching that, doing a match review afterwards. I'm going for a Chelsea win. And the reason for that is I think Lampard has really, he's got a culture of that club now. I think Man United, yes, in recent weeks they have really had an upswing in fortunes, and yes, since lockdown they would be, if the league started on resumption, it was a brand new league, Man United would be top of the league. But they've been playing catch up. Chelsea have just been consistent all season. They've been consistently there. Yeah, mullets. No, we had some mullets. We had some pretty horrific mullets. They come back into fashion, by the way. I'm not going to try and predict. I think Chelsea will win the game today. Man United would have had to travel down. Chelsea, West London, just travel to the game. I think Lampard and Solskjaer are both club legends. That's ironic. They were both playing legends at the clubs. They won trophies at the clubs, Champions Leagues and all that. I think I'm going for a Chelsea win, but I'm not going to try and predict the score. It could go to penalties, for all we know. We do. What I do know is these two teams played out the worst cup final in living memory, with the majority of the players on display playing a couple of years ago. So, yeah, these players have played each other a lot in the FA Cup, and they played the worst cup final in living memory, if that ever. So it will be interesting. The fact that Man City have lost is a great opportunity for silverware for both teams, who weren't expected to get silverware this season. Neither Chelsea or Man United were expected silverware this season. They have a great opportunity now with Arsenal awaiting them in the final to get silverware against the worst Arsenal team in my lifetime. So it's going to be interesting to see, who comes out on top, how they play it. Will it be just an open attacking game? Oh no, Chelsea United cup final. At least there were goals in Spurs Liverpool, apart from just a Hazard penalty. There were a couple of good goals in that Champions League final. Yes, I went to sleep, but that Spurs Liverpool Champions League final, there were goals. Chelsea United, there was a penalty. That was the only exciting moment of the game, was the penalty. Spurs Liverpool, Spurs were just hopeless. Liverpool ground it out because they had been to a Champions League final the season before. They had narrowly missed out on the leagues. They were angry and they went for it. And Spurs are known as chokers. And I keep telling people this. They've spent too much on the stadium with no success to back up having a new stadium. There was nothing wrong with the old White Hart Lane. They just went, oh, let's have a dick measuring competition with Arsenal down the road with their nice shiny stadium. Let's get our own nice shiny stadium. And they've sacked the manager, replaced the manager. The manager they've got now is complaining about everything. I think, yeah, I mean, the semi-finals were, in comparison to the final, I think a lot of emotion was left on the field. I think that exhausted the teams mentally. They put so much in to get into the final. Plus, you still had the league campaigns to complete. You could say that, yeah, the players left everything on the field in the regular league season and in the previous rounds just to get to the final. And I think, yeah, it was a bit of an anticlimactic finish. The Europa League didn't go down well either. That was not a great final either. But there were a lot of complaints going into those two finals about ticket price, about travel issues, hotels, logistical problems. And UEFA were hammered online as being anti-English about why, when you look at other leagues, they go right. Like the NHL, for example, they can sort out a 7-game Stanley Cup final with a few days' notice to go, right, we've got 7 games, bang, 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 this is how we're going to do it. These preps are in place. Champions League, Europa League, 3 years in advance, they name a city that's going to be the host of the final. Get it wrong. You can see where UEFA have gone with this, and this is where Private Island, well, Epstein's Islands for sale, I think. No, UEFA have chased the money. UEFA have felt the financial hit of not being able to complete Champions League and Europa League in the regular season. Much like the FA have felt the financial hit of playing the FA Cup without fans. And much like Man United, as I say, are losing 5 million a day of match revenue from league games by not having fans in attendance. This is UEFA. I think UEFA's headquarters are in, Zurich. I know FIFA's headquarters are in Zurich. I think UEFA are in Switzerland as well. But UEFA have felt the financial hit of not having their pan-European Euro 2020 tournament played. They felt the financial hit of now having to rearrange the Europa League and Champions League into August. There's pressure on how the TV rights are, set up and organised, and a lot of fans are saying we want more free-to-air coverage. And UEFA has to listen to this because they have to be careful. If they keep chasing the money, as we've seen, that's led to a lot of problems. And the criticism UEFA have faced, and broadcasters around Europe have faced, is there's too much on subscription-only pay-per-view. We're going too much down the American model. Fans aren't happy with this because, it's not what we want. We want accessibility, and if you want to, they've gone right. We're coming up with this new European Cup format that no one wanted. The third Europe, bring back the Cup Winners' Cup. UEFA are losing the respect of clubs, players, and fans. There's a breakdown in trust up the pyramid to the top of FIFA, downwards. Lower league clubs are at war with the EFL in this country alone. The PFA are at war with the clubs. The clubs are at war with the FA. The clubs are at war with themselves. The players are divided over the political movement of BLM, and other political movements that are seeping in to the sport. Fans are angry that the sport has been hijacked for political gain. Clubs face going out of business. There's a disconnect in the governance of the sport to the playing group and the clubs, to the fan base. The non-league is treated with complete disdain. Without a non-league and a lower league, you don't have a Premier League. Player development, player base. We don't know if fans are going to be allowed back in stadiums anytime soon. We know that France, for example, has put a ban on public sporting events till September. The government's roadmap here is October, and that's provisional. Lower league clubs will not be able to survive without fans in attendance. And they've said this. They have gone out and said we will not be able to financially survive and function as a league structure from next season as things stand. Oh yeah, no, our lower league clubs are pretty wealthy in comparison to. We have more professional clubs than Italy and France. There is more fully professional clubs than Italy and France. The problem is, yes, they're fully professional, but the TV deal that has evolved with the Premier League and the Championship and League One and League Two is as unbalanced as it's ever been. When the Premier League was set up, half the money went to the Premier League, a quarter went to what is now the Championship, and the other quarter was broken up and divided between League One and League Two. That was how it was, the four divisions as were. Premier League comes along, so the old Division One becomes the Premier League, etc., etc. And the way the money got divvied up is most of it goes to Premier League, the rest of the majority goes to Championship, and then pittance goes to League One and League Two, which has caused a lot more problems. The greed's at the top. If they'd kept the old TV deal structure, most of the clubs would survive. We wouldn't have the case of Wigan going into administration, Bury going out of business, Bolton being docked points, Macclesfield being docked points, Chester City going out of business, Boston United going out of business, Rushden Diamonds disappearing. I mean, a whole host of lower league clubs and non-league clubs, Hereford. I could go on. And the TV deal as it's structured is wrong. We had free-to-air Football League on the telly for a while, taken away, gone. The EFL clubs are divided over the TV deal they have. It's like Leeds owner saying we want a Premier League too. Well, they've got into the Premier League, so they got what they want. But he was trying to sound out other clubs. Apparently 16 clubs were willing to sign up to another breakaway league. So there is a discontent with the clubs that make up the EFL with the EFL and the TV deal they've negotiated with Sky and BT. And they're not happy. And why should they be? There's a disconnect with fans and the Champions League and Europa League TV deal. ITV having shared rights with Sky was brilliant. BT having sole rights is just a disgrace and is not right. American franchises. Generally, when an owner has problems, the league will try and find a buyer or a suitable relocation location. They will try and find a suitable prospective owner. What I find interesting with the US system is they rely on a draft system. We rely on a player development system through the club structure in Europe. And I think the European player development structure works better, but the franchise system works pretty well as well. There's a more even share of TV revenues with all the teams. All the teams get a more equal share. It's weird. I think the European system is very broken when it comes to TV revenue and the sharing of revenues with leagues because of that promotion relegation. But the American system, which is based on draft and collegiate system, again, really strange, harking back to the amateur days of sport. If you could get the best of both worlds out of the two North American and the European style sporting systems and combine them, you get the NRL, ironically. I think looking at club ownership or team ownership, sometimes when an owner gets a bit bored, he'll just sell the team's rights on to another owner. We've seen this with Arizona. The new owner wants to stay in Arizona. Same with the Carolina Hurricanes. The new owner will come in. I'm staying in Carolina. Other owners go, I'm moving the team to this state. So Quebec moving to Colorado to become the Avalanche when they were the Nordiques. I think the thing is, the league head office is much like the fit and proper persons test. They have to go, does this guy have the money? Because the New York Islanders were bought by a guy who had no cash. The team's been badly run. They try and keep teams in the same location as long as possible. That wasn't possible with the Atlanta Thrashers having to move to Winnipeg. The thing was with the Thrashers, the ownership was a shambles, and the league had to find an owner. They had no building to play in. The owners weren't interested, and then True North Entertainment Group, who owned the Manitoba Moose and owned the Bell MTS Centre, was like, we want to. The fans want a team back. There's bitterness with the NHL, but we're ready to go. We have the money. We'll buy the team off you. And the NHL were like, I know it's a small arena, but you've already got an AHL franchise there. Straight away, there you go. So they saved the Thrashers franchise by saying, we have a building ready. We already have an AHL team. We have interest in the Blue Bombers, Winnipeg, the shareholders and that. We're ready to go. Bang. And then we're like, there you go. They gave them. Yes, the Dallas Cowboys. I did a video on that when looking at the CFL, when the CFL survived the pandemic a couple of months ago. The Dallas Cowboys are worth more than what the CFL brings in revenue in a decade. The NFL makes a lot of money. How it makes a lot of a lot of money is just beyond me, because the amount of lawsuits the NFL has, it's crazy. But as I said, the NFL and Major League Baseball are two particular leagues beset by scandal on a daily basis. There's always something coming out about an individual player or an organization not meeting its obligations. And Texas is Texas is surprising. It's there are wealthy areas and there's very poor areas of Texas. The Texan economy is huge, much like California. Texas and California could be independent countries, and Texas, ironically, would not be bankrupt. California would. That's the irony of it. Their GDP, what they develop, bring in to the US economy, is massive. These are states that were once separate republics. These were once standalone countries before they joined the United States. Texas has money. Texas has a lot of sporting franchises. You look at Texas, you look at every major league, they have got their bases covered, from the NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball, MLS, Major League Rugby. They've got a lot. They've got multiple motor racing facilities. They've got just so much sport. Texas is a sports mad state. Sports mad. California would be the world's seventh biggest economy or something, but also it's bankrupt. California relies on the federal government to keep going. New York, if you take up New York City, doesn't have an economy. Texas is, I think, the most balanced economy in the US. It has the energy sector. It has sports, which make up a huge amount of money. Agriculture, mining, petrochemicals, high-tech engineering. Texas is possibly the most diverse economic base in the US. It has a bit of everything. The issue with teams in Texas is not very successful in recent years. They have had a lot of success historically, but in recent years, the Texan teams aren't very successful. And the last decade or so, they're really not. But no, the Dallas Cowboys is the wealthiest franchise in the NFL. They were America's team. People bought into the Cowboys who aren't from Texas. There are Dallas Cowboys fans not from Dallas, Texas, because you've got the Houston Texans. The Dallas Cowboys they were branded as America's team. So Americans from all over the US bought Dallas Cowboys gear. They bought, tickets. So when they see the Dallas Cowboys play away from home, they have fans in every city and every state. On the side of the California sports franchises as well, California, their sports franchises bring in less money. They're worth less. California is a really interesting location for sport. They have some very successful teams, very historical teams in a variety of sports. But the income that they generate is nothing compared to Texas. It is mental. Texas and California make up huge proportions out of the GDP of the US. Very wealthy states. There is also great inequality in these states as well. Let's be clear on that. But you look at the sports franchise net worth, the value of the sports teams. For some reason, the Dallas Cowboys, because they're so wealthy. And then bear in mind, you've got the other sports teams in Texas as well. Okay. Which the Dallas Cowboys. And you take out the LA Lakers. And yes, got the LA Kings, very historical organization. Don't make a lot of money, ironically. The Anaheim Ducks don't make a lot of money. The San Jose Sharks do not make a lot. You can add up. You've got the LA Clippers as well. They've had a little bit of success, not a lot. Oakland Raiders are moving to Nevada anyway, so we can discount them. You've got the 49ers. You've got the Golden State Warriors, Sacramento Kings. There's a lot of sports teams in California. The MLS franchises, you've got Major League Rugby in there now. You put all their net worth together, the Dallas Cowboys are still worth more money than even the LA Lakers. The Dallas Cowboys are worth more than all of Californian sport. So there is clearly the economics. Texas is the most sports mad state. You look at their university programs and all the colleges and universities in Texas. The amount of NFL players that come through the Texas education system. You look at it and it's mental. Texas is sports country. New York as a state has more teams than California, because you've obviously got to count Buffalo. people forget about Buffalo is actually in New York. You've got the Islanders, the Rangers, teams in Brooklyn. You've got the Mets, the Bills, Buffalo, the Sabres in Buffalo. Yeah, New York. New York in itself is big population area, big economy, and economics and sports are important. Sports is a business, and yes, I think there is a massive overspending in professional sport. We know this. We know that professional sports have been overspending for a very long time, and it is not sustainable under the current economic pandemic kind of thing. And there needs to be some kind of redress going forward. But the amount of money in North American sport is just mental. The amount of money, you look at the New York metropolitan area, and then you add Buffalo in there with two teams. Buffalo has two teams. Buffalo has two, major league franchise teams in Buffalo. Mad, ain't it? New York itself, you take the Bills and Sabres out of the equation. New York has got loads of teams. It makes LA look silly. Chicago doesn't have that many teams. It's ridiculous. There is clearly an appetite for sport in the New York metropolitan area and in New York State. I mean, New York, Texas, Florida, and California drive the sports market in the US. Alabama has none, yes. Connecticut has none. Wyoming has none. I mean, I think there's 20 states that don't have a major league sports franchise. Buffalo has two professional major league sports teams. Alabama, Arkansas, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, Maine. I think there's 20 states that don't have a major league franchise. Buffalo has two. Mad. Kentucky, I think, does, actually. I don't know. I don't think Tennessee has the Titans. I don't think Kentucky does. No. Nashville's in Tennessee. No, I don't think Kentucky does. But I'd have to look at it. But I know there's 20 states that no longer have or have never had a major league sports franchise. And a lot of it's to do with population and economic wealth. It's to do with the corporate money. It's whether, okay, right, can we get enough TV revenue? Can we get enough fans in the arena? Can we get enough sponsorships? And you've got to think of outside the box. I mean, if Utah can have the Utah Jazz. You wouldn't think Utah is a basketball, location. Apparently it is. But it's to do with the corporate dollar and can you get a financial backer or backers who are quite wealthy? Can you actually sell out the arena? I don't know what the parameters are for location. I think population size and catchment area for media coverage and selling of media rights as well to the local and national media has something to do with where professional sports teams in the US are located. This is why the NHL is not re-expanding into Canada. Economics and catchment. They've chosen all the big locations. Vermont and Maine are very interesting states. There's a lot of NHL and AHL and ECHL hockey players who come through Vermont and Maine playing. So they are producing sporting athletes, ironically, but it's again, they're not actually that wealthy. Regardless of the lack of population, they're not very wealthy. They don't have the metropolitan areas to sustain what the Americans class as a major league franchise, which is a shame because I think they'll be great for winter sports, extreme sports. But sports stars come from these locations, but the various professional leagues go, we're going to ignore these locations because they haven't got the corporate dollar. I think that's the problem with the US system. Because if you look at the European system, let's look at the Champions League. Atalanta are in the knockout stages, and are a lot of people's underdogs to win the Champions League with the way they play. Arizona's got a hockey team. Vegas has a hockey team. You can in modern arenas, you can control the ice temperature and there's cooling facilities. It's just surprising. Yeah, they're desert locations. There are professional hockey teams there. It is mad. Yorkshire, Texas was more beautiful. That is in the eye of the beholder, as I've never actually been to Texas, and the biodiversity of Texas is different to Yorkshire. You cannot compare the two because of the area that Texas covers, geographical landmass, and the change in biodiversity of Texas. There's bits of Texas on the Gulf of Mexico that are subtropical, and then you've got desert, and then you've got base of the Rocky Mountains, and then you've got temperate regions of Texas where you can grow cotton and nutmeg and peanuts, and you can actually harvest crops. And then you've got grasslands that are just grasslands where they're prairie. Texas is different, and as I've never been there, I can't really comment on the state of Texas. Yorkshire is all green, Texas is mostly yellow. You could go with that. Again, as I say, you want to focus on your opinion of the way. The worth, trust me, check out the worth of the Dallas Cowboys, then check out the worth of taking out the LA Lakers. Trust me. You look at the LA Kings, how much they're worth, the Anaheim Ducks and the San Jose Sharks in the NHL, they're not worth that much. You look at Major League Soccer, they're not worth that much. The baseball, Major League Baseball, okay, has a lot of money, also has a lot of inequality. You have to look at the fact that the California teams, they've moved the Raiders, they're going. The Rams and the Cardinals don't make any money. They're badly run. So the NFL side of things in Canada, in California, is a mess. You're from LA, great for you. LA, okay then. You take the LA. If you take LA in a nutshell, the LA metropolitan area, yeah, there is money there. It's still not as worth as much as the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys is still worth more financially than all the LA franchises put together, all of them. Because the only reason why sport works in LA is a big name star gets signed by an LA team to try and sell that sport to LA. San Diego no longer has Major League Sports, apart from Major League Rugby. They've all moved. You look, the Raiders were moved from Oakland to LA, then back to Oakland, and now they're getting moved to Vegas. They're not worth jack. Seriously, Californian sport is worth nothing compared to Texas. It's worth a lot. It's worth a lot, but Texas is worth more. You look at the amount of money that the franchises themselves are worth. The Dallas Cowboys are worth $8 billion US dollars net worth. You could add all the Californian teams up, and yeah, they might come to a little bit more than the Dallas Cowboys. But if one team in the Dallas Cowboys is worth $8 billion, and you add up all the teams in California, and they only just beat that, I think you'll find Texas is worth more sporting wise than California. California, you're all far too woke. I'm sorry, Californians are busy like having soy non-fat lattes than watch. Seriously, they have issues attracting fans in some areas of California. There's a reason why the Raiders are moving from Oakland. There's a reason why the 49ers are in a mess. There's a reason why the Clippers don't make any money in comparison, partly because their owners are racist. There's a reason why San Diego no longer has a Major League Sports franchise apart from in Major League Rugby, which is not worth jack. There's a reason why the Anaheim Ducks are worth sod all. They're worth 0.3% of what the Cowboys are worth. They're worth less than 300 million. That's Cowboys, 8 billion. And the Anaheim Ducks have won a title in more recent times than the Dallas Cowboys. The LA Kings only are worth any money because Gretzky went there in the 80s. The fact they won 2 Stanley Cups is nothing. Lakers and Dodgers, the LA Lakers, yeah, they're worth quite a bit, but at the same time, they're not worth the same amount as the Dallas Cowboys. They're worth billions. They're not worth 8 billion. The Clippers ain't worth jack. The Dodgers, they're not worth as much as they used to be. Yes, but the owner of the Clippers is the actual franchise, not the owner. The owner's wealth has got nothing to do with the actual net value of the team itself. You have to distinguish between the two, you utter American moron. If you cannot distinguish between the value of a team and the value of the owner, then you have a problem. The value of the owner has got nothing to do with the value of the franchise and what the franchise makes in profit, loss, and revenue. That is the difference. Christ, the guys who own Vegas are worth billions. Vegas itself, as a team, is worth $350 million US, even though they paid $500 million to enter the NHL. The owners of Vegas are worth 1.5 billion. The Vegas Golden Knights are worth about 350 to 400 million. It's the standalone franchise. The Clippers owner is a wealthy old man. He's also a raging racist and a homophobe, but that's beside the point. The team itself and how much revenue they make for the NBA, how much they have to pay outgoing in salary, and how much they get net income is completely different to what the owner is worth. The Man United are worth 3.3 billion. Their owners are in debt. Man United is owned by the Glazers, who actually owe other people money. John Henry, there's loads of people I don't like. The fact that I am being accused of being thick is, well, let me talk to Mayor One, because I think he's trying to say Major One, right? The value of a franchise compared to the value of an owner are two distinct things, right? You have to look at the Clippers themselves, how much they're worth standalone. Take their owner away from it. The net worth of the owner is irrelevant. You have to say, right, what do they bring in income to the NBA? Do they make a loss? Do they make a profit? If they make a profit, they have to revenue share with the teams that make a loss, hence the Memphis Grizzlies, who make no sodding money. Oh, he was not kicked out of the league years ago. Oh my God. He still technically owns the team. He's just not allowed any day-to-day running with it. They make millions. They don't make billions, do they? The Clippers make hardly any money to the Lakers. The Lakers make all the money in US basketball in the California area. The Clippers make sod all in comparison to the Lakers because they haven't been successful. Hence why the Lakers can have the dream team every 10 years and spend hundreds of millions on the salary cap, where the Clippers can go, The Clippers win nothing, the Lakers win a lot. Winning brings in money. The standalone value of a team is different to the standalone value of the owner. Oh my God! Please go back to being an arsehole American, because that's what you are. And the NBA really is a sport played by, yeah, right. The NBA is a sport that I have little care for, partly because of fans like you who cannot distinguish between the value of a team and the value of the owner. But you're all American. Whatever. Americans are arrogant and always claim they're right. Seriously, the Clippers are not the same value of franchise standalone to the Lakers. The Lakers make a lot more money than the Clippers for the NBA. Now, the Clippers may be profitable. They do not make anywhere near as much money as the Lakers. The Lakers, you've got LeBron James, you've got Kobe Bryant. These big names that have played for the Lakers bring them in money. They are the dream team. This is where money gets rained. Clippers are, who plays for the Clippers? Anybody. Clippers. Oh, fuck you. Go away. You are a pain in the ass. Whatever. So you look at this, right? You were trying to say the wealth of the owner equals the wealth of the team. It does not work that way. Man United are worth billions. Their owners are in debt to other people to finance their purchasing of the club. LeBron, yeah, he goes to the Lakers. They win a lot of titles. Kobe wins a lot of titles, right? Bang, yay, right? That makes them money. That makes the NBA want to sell Lakers gear. They sell Lakers gear worldwide. How many people do you know who actually own Clippers gear? How many Hall of Famers have played for the Clippers? No, but that's what you're trying to suggest, though. You're trying to suggest that the wealth of the owner equals the wealth of the team. The wealth of the team is a standalone thing. How much profit they make for the league, how much loss they actually make, because you can actually be a very wealthy owner, but your team lose millions and millions and millions. This is why Arizona struggled for so many years as the Coyotes. They didn't make any money. They didn't have any success. The NHL props them up. In recent times, the last year and a half, they have a new owner who, guess what? They're making money. Their attendance is up. Money's up. Florida. The Florida Panthers have some of the wealthiest owners in US sports. They make a loss. They operate at a $20 million loss a year before the lockout. The Florida Panthers make no money. Their owners, some of the wealthiest sports owners in US sports. You have to distinguish between the sports owner and how much. Oh my God. Oh, clear. Oh my God. Teams in Arizona do make money. Dear God. we have a. They can make money. It's how they're run. What you are trying to tell me is the wealth of the owner dictates the success of the team and the wealth of the team. The Chicago Blackhawks are worth over $1 billion. Over $1 billion. Their owners worth three something billion. The New York Rangers, one Stanley Cup in 60 years, they are worth billions. The Toronto Maple Leafs haven't won jack shit since 1967. They're worth $2 billion. $2 billion. They've had some pretty shocking ownership over time. So you look at the Rangers, they're worth, I think, 1.3 billion US dollars. The New York Islanders, 300 million US dollars. The Islanders have won more trophies in Stanley Cups than the Rangers have in the last forever. Not worth anything. It's how you run the team as well. You may be financially. Some of these owners in US sports have got more money than brains. The Seattle franchise that has just entered the NHL, it's about to enter the NHL, their ownership group's worth about $3 to $4 billion US dollars. They paid $600 to enter of the league. Financial backing doesn't necessarily mean success. I mean, Christ, the Saudi prospective owners and the owners of Man City and the owners of PSG are worth trillions. They're state-funded actors. The actual wealth of the clubs themselves, significantly less. Man United is one of the top 10 wealthiest footballing teams in Europe, the world. Haven't been successful for 7 years or so. I've only won a couple of trophies. Still worth 3.3 billion. Liverpool worth less than $1 billion US, I think $1 billion English pounds. Won multiple trophies in the last couple of years. So wealth of ownership and wealth of club, different things. And the fact that you think I'm classing as a fool, no shit, Sherlock. Here's the thing: if you attract a big name player, you can sell all that merchandise globally. Sport is global. If you have that big name player on whatever contract, you will sell stuff. You will sell stuff, right? Now, the definition of wealth of owner, and you separate from club. If Man United were a standalone club without the Glazers' debt, they would be much better run. They have been very well run financially by Ed Woodward. What they haven't been well run is in the debt that has been racked up in the ownership of the club, and that is a concern. Man City, if they were a standalone club, would be bankrupt. Chelsea, if they were a standalone club without Abramovich, would be bankrupt. In fact, they basically were bankrupt when he bought them. You look at Valencia in Spain, La Liga, they're basically bankrupt. They've been bankrupt multiple times. You go to Italy and you look at AC Milan, they've got no money because they have money, their owners have money, but they, as a club, are not making any money right now. PSG, without the ownership they have, worth nothing. AS Monaco, without the ownership they have, worth nothing. Football and sport in general is heavily reliant on the wealthy backer. There needs to be some kind of rebalance between how teams are owned and run, and bring it back a little bit, because the Dallas Cowboys being worth $8 billion, they've not been successful for 20 years. The fact they are worth $8 billion is they're well marketed, they turn a profit, they sell out their stadium, they regularly flog as much merchandise as physically possible, they regularly make playoffs. They fail in the playoffs, but they make it. They're well run off the field. Premier League and standalone leagues, I think we are going to see a change in how the sports finance works. There has to be a change, because there's no way with the current situation that sports can continue to throw money around as they are. Big fan of the NRL. Players over there took a 70% pay cut for their teams to survive. 70% pay cut in order for the league to have a season and the league to have coming seasons. The AFL players took a pay cut. They also went to the Australian government for 500 million Australian dollars in a loan in order for the league to be sustainable and survive long term. So if other leagues and sports around the world can go, we cannot sustain this level of spending, we cannot sustain this level of expenditure before profit, because there is profit in the AFL and the NRL, they are making money, but they have to say to themselves, when we cannot sustain the level of spending, not income, spending. It is not sustainable when we've had to lay off non-playing staff. We cannot sustain that. Or, in other words, basically, allow it to happen because the response of our fan base, which we're trying to keep on side, considering that the fans are losing money here because they're losing jobs, they're not making as much money. It will not be tolerated by the fan base. Oh look here, yes. I mean, I think the top paid NRL player is getting $1.2 million, 1.2 million Australian dollars, which works a year, which works out at I think about £750,000, which works out about 700,000 US a year. Yeah, no. Premier League players could definitely take a pay cut. They won't. The PFA have allowed a situation to happen where individual clubs and playing groups came together and worked out a solution with face-to-face meetings. Birmingham City is a prime example of a club that went, right, we've got to take a 50% pay cut. Here's the books. I do believe that some clubs are not fully opening up their books. Some sports are not fully opening up the books. We're showing what we know. We know this is a thing. We've got one set of books here that the public sees, and the other set of books that the ownership know about. I think that the situation is going to be unsustainable. We are going to have to see salary caps enforced across the board in football at various league levels. We're going to have to see UEFA come up with a solution to financial fair play, because that isn't the answer. Because Man City have, appealed successfully the decision. I think the NRL and the AFL, yeah, I mean, the fact that these players, as a group, as a union, said within 2 days of the league being shut down, we're taking a pay cut, and then within 24 hours of them saying we are willing to take a 7% pay cut as a union with a unanimous voting, that's every player going, I'm happy to take this pay cut, or I'm happy to take a temporary pay cut or pay deferral. That the NRL admitted that they misappropriated the retirement fund, a third of the retirement fund. The fact that Todd Greenberg, the CEO, resigned midway through the crisis. Peter V'landys, the ARL, the Australian Rugby League chairman, who's also running the NRL at this time as well, has basically sorted out a TV deal, which is worth over $1 billion Australian dollars, in 3 weeks. You sorted out a multi-billion or multi-million TV deal. He negotiated a loan from the Australian government. He brought in rule changes that have been debated about for about a decade, which have sped up the game, made the game a better watch. Yeah, it proves that change can happen quickly if you have the right person in charge who has enough drive to go, sod this, this is what we're doing, we have to do it, bang. European football could learn from the NRL and AFL and how quickly they got loans from the national government, how quickly they, got restarted. They got restarted before European football did. How quickly they allowed fans back into stadiums with social distancing. The European governments could learn a lot from how the Australian government and the Australian sports have come back. We've already got fans back in stadiums. We're already having full contact sports being played. Some slight rule changes to speed it up, but the game sport is back, being played. TV ratings are up. Newcastle takeover, yay or nay? I think that the fact that NRL, NHL, what do you prefer? I'm torn. I'm torn on the NRL, NHL debate. I'm a fan of both. The NRL is more accessible, ironically, to watch because I can get an overseas subscription. So I've got an NRL subscription off their website. I can watch every game. NHL, I can't watch every game. There's a difference in accessibility. Accessibility outside of Australia to the NRL is there. Accessibility to the NHL South North America, not so easy. I can't watch as many games. I don't have the ability to watch, or the option to watch as many games. On the Newcastle United takeover, the dragging on is the situation that I'm concerned about. We've been in a situation now for over 2.5 months. A 2 to 3 week process has been dragged out for 2.5 months. That is a concern. Yes, I can understand some of the reservations about the takeover. I completely understand that. I understand that there is pressure being put on the Premier League to block the takeover, which I think is wrong. I think that's hypocrisy because football has taken dodgy money before. I do think Newcastle do need some new ownership. They do need investment. They do need a change in direction. Do I Do I have sympathy for Steve Bruce and the players? Yes. Steve Bruce is not sure about his job. Whether you love or loathe him, Steve Bruce, he's basically, there's been rumours about Pochettino coming in with this new ownership group if they are successful. I feel sorry for someone when he's being undermined like that by the media. When actually the performances, Newcastle have had some good results this season. They got further in the FA Cup than they ever have under Mike Ashley's ownership with Steve Bruce as manager. Now, he's not everyone's cup of tea. I get that. His style of football's not everyone's cup of tea. I get that. But what he's doing is with limited resources, with an owner who doesn't give a fuck, and with a lot of negative press surrounding his appointment in the first place, he's facing the same problems Rafa Benitez had. Not been given the resources to work with, not been given a transfer fund to work with, a club that's more likely to be fighting a relegation battle than a European battle, a club that's mid-table at best with the resources available. And this comes down to ownership. But then you look at the ownership off the field and how the club has been run for the last decade and a bit. It's a shambles. I'm in favour of a takeover of any kind. I think possibly the Saudi-backed consortium is not the right group to take over the club, but I do think that the club needs to be taken over by someone who will care more about the club and reinvest in the infrastructure, change the culture behind the scenes, try and take the club forward and try and make the club more competitive. Improve the transfer policies a mess at Newcastle as well. It doesn't help. But there needs to be a positive change where there's more involvement with the fan base, more fan consultation on things, more stability off the field, because that's clearly been a problem. Investment in club head at front office, investment in the youth setup. Whether this is the right deal to do it, that's for the Premier League and the FA to decide. But I think they do need a change of ownership. They need a change of ownership since Mike Ashley took the club over. He wanted to make a quick sale and he got lumbered with a club that he doesn't really care about. He's milked it for profit. The fans are far too loyal because they sell out every week until recently when they decided to start protesting and there was a definite empty seats at St James's. It's not a thing. But it is what it is. Will the Brisbane Broncos win another game in 2020? I think the only reason why they beat the Canterbury Bulldogs is the Canterbury Bulldogs are not a good team this year. And Canterbury's got their own issues off the field with various bits and pieces. On the what happened against West Tigers, for example, with the record defeat, what happened against the Sydney Roosters with the record defeat, the Parramatta Eels demolishing them in finals football last season. Brisbane have got problems. Is it Seibold's fault? I don't know. I mean, the initial agreement was that Wayne Bennett would stay until last season. He left the season early. Seibold would stay at South Sydney for another season. They did the swap a season early. I felt that was a bit weird considering that the contractual agreements that the two teams had in place were for this season. So Seibold got brought in a season early. Bennett goes to South Sydney a season early. You could look at recruitment. You could look at list management. You could look at the players they have there. They've got 12 rep players in their squad. 12 players who played State of Origin. 12 players who've represented either New Zealand or Australia at Test level. Maguire, the fact that they've lost their forward pack is inexperienced. They've lost a lot of the leaders that were positive, such as your Sam Thaidays, your Corbin Sims, your Maguires. They've gone on or retired. The back line is a shambles. You've got three fullbacks. You have three fullbacks playing in the starting lineup for Brisbane. Three. Milford and is what's his role? Is he a fullback? Is he a half? You got three fullbacks in the starting lineup, and Darius Boyd is not a centre. He's a fullback. Milford is not a half. He's a fullback. You've got Corey Oates has now shattered his feet, his thigh bone, had a compound fracture, and it was through the skin. That was great. That was an unfortunate injury, but he wants to be a forward rather than a back. He wants to move and play in the forward pack. Now he's out for the season, and that's a serious injury. That could be career threatening. You've got a lot of young, like David Fafita. The ongoing issue with David Fafita is he staying at the Broncos for less money, or is he going to the Gold Coast for more money? I think he's going to end up going to Gold Coast. I think the Brisbane Broncos. I mean, the issues there are long-standing. I think Wayne Bennett showed how good a coach he is by getting that group of players to a level that he was for so long. But they haven't won, and I mean they haven't. They've only missed finals, I think, in 3 seasons in their existence. 3 or 4 seasons that they've existed since '88. In 32 years, they've missed the finals 4 times, and this season's going to be one of them. It's a shortened season. Wayne Bennett is Brisbane. The issue is he was there for too long. The team is still living on past glories. The recruitment and management of their list and their playing group is what it is. The fact they haven't replaced key leaders in the forward pack, that's where the issue lies. Is their forward pack is too, when the young players, when things go against them, their heads drop. There's a divide in the dressing room. Apparently, there is a divide between those players who follow Seibold and those players against Seibold. So there's a split in the dressing room. There's too much chopping and changing with players. The fact that Brisbane signed him up to a 5-year contract and got him in a year early. The way they dealt with Wayne Bennett's departure. The way they've dealt with, I'm not sure if they're going to win another game. They might win the odd one here or there, but I can't. They're not making finals. I think Seibold's on a hiding to nothing. It's not all his fault. That's the thing. That's not all Anthony Seibold's fault that they are where they are. They had a wobbly patch last season. They turned it around. They made finals. Okay, they got battered in the finals, but they made finals football. This season, shortened season, halfway through the season, winning 3 games. 1 game since lockdown. They've won 1 game in 7. That is not a good win return. They're the same level of form as the Canterbury Bulldogs. 1 win in 7. They're not in a good place. On the Rugby League World Cup, will it be moved? I don't think the RFL and Rugby League in general can afford a pushback. I don't think they can afford not playing the World Cup next season, in next year. I think the World Cup has to go ahead as planned in 2021. Whether it will or not is another thing. I don't think they can afford to cancel it. They can't afford to postpone it. Plain and simple. I think the Rugby League World Cup has to take place next season as planned. But we'll see what happens. We've got to get through the next 12 months yet before we can even discuss the Rugby League World Cup. They might have to push it forward slightly, but then you risk clashing with the Euro Championship because they're both tournaments are using Wembley for various games. So I can see it being played. I can't see the organisers wanting to cancel altogether. Rugby League cannot afford that. Now, will it take place in England, or will it actually have to go to Australia or New Zealand again? That's something to hold in mind. Is it might have to play down under. I think the World Cup goes ahead as planned with no change to schedule. But we'll see what happens, and we'll see, what percentage of fans are allowed in stadiums, where we're at. Next year is well down the road, considering what's happened in 2020 so far. I wouldn't want to predict what's going to happen next week, let alone next year. I think it goes ahead. The other major sports have been pushed back a year. I think they're all very likely to go ahead as planned. We just got to get through this year yet. We haven't had a restart date for Super League yet. And what Super League? I mean, the Toronto Wolfpack may not be able to complete the season because 7 players have visa issues. And the RFL have really been asleep on that issue because it's a team based in Canada, which they were keen on, but not keen on. But I don't know how the Wolfpack may not survive as a team. So there are issues with the Toronto Wolfpack being able to complete the season, and discussions. And they've had those discussions with the Super League, saying, "Look, we have these 7 key players. who we can't sort out visas for. They have to reapply. There's a process, and because they're coming from overseas, and because we're based in Canada and travel restrictions, we may not be allowed to have them. And the Home Office has got to get involved. And the RFL have been asleep on the button there. The Super League have been asleep on the thing there. That's an issue in itself. Is can Toronto complete the season? If they can't complete the season, that screws up the Super League. That will, there's a whole host of issues that need to be resolved. The Challenge Cup needs to be played out. There is issues at play here. We are 5 rounds into the Super League, but we're not even sure if they're going to complete it. It's a mess. So we have to see what announcements get made by the RFL and Super League. Whether we get onto the Rugby League World Cup, that's too far down the line. That's too far down the road. That's like in another generation right now. We have to get through the next couple of months, figure out where we're at, look at the restrictions being eased on public gatherings and the economy and the vaccine and a whole host of other things. Sport and politics shouldn't be this complex and shouldn't be this tangled, but they are. Anyway, I'm going to have to leave that there because we have the FA Cup semi-final coming up, which I'm going to watch. We have 7 minutes till kick-off. So I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for all your questions, etc., etc. And I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon. Of course, we'll have a match review on the Man United Chelsea FA Cup semi-final. And we'll see what happens in that game, how the game plays out, and how it's played and the quality of football. For now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon. And Bosh.